بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
ومن الناس من يقول آمنا بالله وباليوم الآخر وما هم بمؤمنين يخادعون الله والذين آمنوا وما يخدعون إلا أنفسهم وما يشعرون في قلوبهم مرض فزادهم الله مرضا ولهم عذاب أليم بما كانوا يكذبون.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما بعد. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم يغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. I first and foremost like to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has no partners or associates, and I am grateful for Allah choosing me to be a servant of His. And I should never think that Islam is a favor to Allah, but actually Islam is a favor to me. And I first and foremost thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for allowing me to be here and reach my destination safely. I like to also thank the Forces organization and the rest of the brothers who have facilitated this event for being part and parcel responsible for my exposure here in the UK. Brothers and sisters, I must say that in order for us to understand this way of life, Islam, is first we have to understand the key components of our belief. And the Aqidah is what the Muslims believe. And our belief have to override what our tongues say and has to correlate what's in our hearts. And what's in our hearts has to manifest the belief system through an outward application in order for us to have authentic Iman or practical Islam. And unfortunately today, we are seeing Muslims who have the right covering or the right garb that sometimes we believe that's the religion. But unfortunately, our actions become contradictory to what our tongues are articulating. And sometimes it's because of our lack of ideological clarity. So our language or our practice becomes ambiguous, unclear, very deceptive. And so the garb may look good, and it may be represented as the symbol of Islam. But is that the articulation of what we believe? Or is it just symptoms and signs and indications of what the religion stands for? And so I say this because we must deal with the topic, which is Iman Deficiency Syndrome. And just like anything, you have organic disease and you have spiritual diseases. In organic diseases, it's easily that you go to the doctor if you have a cut or you have a sickness. The doctor will give you some medicine for it. But the spiritual disease is what we really want to focus on, because that is the main objective of the sickness from all aspects. Because if a person spiritually has a disease, you can't go to the pharmacy or the doctor to get that cure. So this cure has to come from a divine source. And if that source is not applied on the spiritual sickness, the patient will continue to be sick. The Quran is full of prognosis. It has the cure. But the question is, are the Muslims using the cure to cure their sickness? And I like to use an analogy that I always use, and from a doctoral point of view. Anytime someone gets a sickness, rather it's lupus, rather it's cancer, rather it's AIDS, there's always outward indications to let you know that the patient is sick. They get opportunistic infections. They get brain disease, skin disease, meningitis. And all of these are outward signs to let you know that the person is sick. And AIDS, is acute immune deficiency syndrome, which happens is that the immune system could no longer fight off the germs or the bacteria that attacks the immune system. And the disease infiltrates within the T cell. It perpetrates like it's part of the system. And so what happens when the immune system don't have the energy to fight off the bacteria, then it overthrows the immune system, so the immune system becomes weak. And the signs of that is the opportunistic infections. And sometimes you don't get the symptoms. AIDS patients don't get that symptoms. Syphilis is just a fast motion of AIDS. See, they have classified these names, but yet they all have the same multi-manifestations, and that is the breakdown of the immune system. And so if the people would increase the energy of the immune system, then the immune system be strong enough to fight off the disease. So on the spiritual level, what is the immune system of the Muslim? It is his Iman. It is his heart. Okay? Kufr is an alienation. It is a disease. And you have to see kufr as a disease, no matter how it manifests itself. Remember, AIDS, cancer, lupus, they all have multi-manifestations of its sickness in the immune system, but they call them different names. As the Prophet ﷺ said, Kufr tamilla wahida. Kuf is one system, but the system manifests itself in many ways, just like these diseases that breaks down the immune system in the AIDS patient or the lupus patient or the cancer patient or the syphilis patient. But so kufr is this disease, and when you look at the word kufr, linguistically it means a farmer who takes a seed and covers it with dirt. And now as a juristic term, it means one who conceals, so it covers up, just like the disease covers or infiltrates the T cell to make it seem like it's part of the system. So what has happened from that perspective, we have been injected with the virus of kufr, and we can look at it on a global perspective of the Muslims. And that is because now there is no quarantine anymore. that the disease has intermingled with the Muslim community, and Muslims have adopted kufr customs, which is the disease that helps to break down his immune system, which is his Iman. And so we have this disease called IDS, Iman Deficiency Syndrome. What are the symptoms of Iman Deficiency Syndrome? One of them is that when you see the Muslims, far as globally, the disfragmentation, the disunity, how the non-Muslims could invade the lands of the Muslims and slaughter our women and children, rape and sodomize and burn down masjids. This is one symptom and sign of Iman Deficiency Syndrome. Because when we had the state, which was in Medina, the Islamic state, the Sharia was what protected the integrity of society. And once that system was broken down, then the immune system to fight off the kufr systems to attack Islam began to break down. And so these are the symptoms. That's one symptom. Now when you look at the Muslims in their homes, you have the Muslim who make 4 prayers a day now today, not 5. And this is the things that's taking place. When you have Muslims who are married, who beat their wives, is a symptom and sign of Iman Deficiency Syndrome. And when you have some of our leaders who try to philosophize Islam or compromise Islam just to appease the government that they're in, these are all the signs and symptoms of Iman Deficiency Syndrome. And what we need to do to get rid of this disease of kufr, because kufr covers up the true nature of things. And when we participate in the system and the customs of the society, even though it's not conducive to the nature of the human being, then we begin to get the disease. And what happens is that it causes a breakdown in the Iman. And the Iman is the vocal point of our belief. And the only way we can cure it is by using the medicine. And remember, the Quran has the prognosis. It tells you what you should do when you're sick. And it gives you the direction and methodology to use as the formula so that you can get well. And if the Muslims don't know, because sometimes the sick heart cannot identify that it's sick, just like a drug addict who is in denial. And this is why kufr it also means to deny. And sometimes Muslims become in denial of their sickness. And so if they are in denial, you have to get the patient to know that he's sick. That's the first steps towards rehabilitation. He has to acknowledge that he has a sick heart. But sometimes it's tricky. Remember, the AIDS patient don't always have multi-manifestations of the sickness. And you may not see the outward indications that he's sick. Same thing with the Muslim. He may look good. He makes 5 prayers a day. He looks like he's dressing like a Muslim. And everything is good, but yet his aqidah is not correct. He doesn't have the right methodology of how Islam should be disseminated to the people or in his family home. We have many people who believe that they're on the right path, but the way their methodology of how they deliver it is so harsh and brutal that the people who you're trying to convince that they're sick, they see the sickness in you because of how you have brought the message to try to cure them. So it's just like what they say, فَقِدُوا شَيْئًا لَا يُؤْتِهِ, which means the one who's lacking something can't give it to someone else. So if you saying that the non-Muslims are sick, but yet you have the sickness yourself, how could you give it to someone else? How could you treat someone else if you yourself have a sick heart? وَمَنْ لَمْ يَنْفَعُ دَعْوَهُ كَيْفَ دَعْوَ غَيْرَهُ, and the one's medicine who does not benefit him, how can it benefit anyone else? So the Quran is shifa'. It is a cure. And Allah mentions it. Ya ayyuhan nas, qad ja'atkum maw'izatun min rabbikum wa shifa'u liman fil suduri wa hudan wa rahmatun lil mu'minin. O mankind, now has come a guidance and a message for you, and a cure for the sickness that's in your breast. It is a guidance and a mercy to what? For those who believe, though. So the cure only can cure the people who have taqwa and those who believe. So the symptoms of the heart is that, as the one of the companions, Hudayfa ibn al-Yamani, rahimahullah, may Allah have mercy on him, he said that the temptations are presented to the heart, one by one. Any that accepts them will be left with a black stain on the heart. But any heart that rejects them will be left with a mark of purity. So that the hearts of two types, a dark heart that has turned away and become like an overturned vessel, and a pure heart that will never be harmed by temptations for as long as the earth and the heavens exist. The dark heart only recognizes good and denounces evil when this suits his desires and whims. So what they do is they take the Quran and the Hadith, and whatever fits them, then they are in agreement to it. But yet, when it's against them in their wrong methods and their wrong practices, they reject it. This is one of the parts of the sick heart. He also says, the first of the heart is when it is exposed to temptations, it absorbs it like a sponge, the heart. And that soaks up just like water, the sins, leaving a black stain in it, and it continues to absorb each temptation that is offered until it's darkened and corrupt. And so what happens, he continues to do the sin and the sin over and over until his heart dies of a total eclipse. And it overshadows his heart. And he no longer could decipher truth from falsehood. So falsehood becomes true and truth becomes falsehood. Because this heart is diseased and covered with darkness of sins committing. Because we don't get the chance to reflect on our own selves. We are too busy trying to correct everyone else. And we forget ourselves and lose focus. Self-inventory is forgotten because it is you that you must be concerned. You cannot believe on your own to think that, yes, you are on the path. The Sahabas themselves never thought that they were on the right course, even though they was. Sometimes Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu, he said he used to listen to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam while he was given the khutbah about heaven and hell, and he felt in the presence of the messenger and the message like it was actually happening. But as soon as he leaves, he said that something about his heart, he felt like he was being a hypocrite. And so he felt to himself that he was hypocritical. But they said, no, everyone feels like that because that is the nature of the human being, that the faith goes up and down. So if you think that you have it, never let your soul deceive yourselves and making you think that you are on a certain station, because the nafs could deceive you and overturn and make you believe that you're on the right path. So these black spots, so he continues, it continues to absorb the temptation, and what is meant by like an overturned vessel is when this happens, two dangerous sicknesses take hold. It plunges into ruin. The first is that of it's confusing good with evil, to such an extent that it does not recognize the former and does not denounce the latter. This sickness may even gain hold of the extent that it believes good to be evil and vice versa. The second is that it's setting up its desires as judge over the above, what the Prophet ﷺ taught. This is what happens. Then his own opinions become his sunnah. His own desires, his own whims begin to be implemented of how Islam should be established. And he forgets about the tazkiyah, the purification. And so we must use the method, the medicine that helps us bringing about the completion of our faith. Tazkiyah is what they consider purification, cleansing, stimulating growth, making pious, reforming its growth to make it develop to a certain height of its perfection. This is what tazkiyah. Kada aflaha man zakaha wa kada kaba man dasaha. He who purifies himself is successful, and he who doesn't corrupts himself. So this is what the method of using for the Iman deficiency syndrome, that we must purify our hearts, purify our understanding of Islam, so that we could begin to understand clearly what Islam is and how it should be practiced. Today, another symptom of Iman deficiency syndrome in America, we have Muslims who migrate to America, right? And you know, according to the hadith, you know, he who migrates, actions is accompanied by intentions. And he who migrates for Allah and his messenger, then his migration is for Allah and his messenger. And he who migrates for some worldly gain or some beautiful woman to marry, then that's what his migration is for. And another key to the heart is intentions. Ikhlas, purity of the intentions. So here we have Muslims who migrate, but what they're migrating for is not to establish Allah's deen. It is to establish the dunya, because in America you have the stores, they're selling beer, they're selling khinzir, pork, cigarettes, cigars, condoms, pornographic flicks, lotto, all of these things, Iman deficiency syndrome. These are the symptoms. Whenever you see that, then that is an indication of a person's Iman. No doubt about it. No matter what he says from his tongue, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but you're selling beer, Iman deficiency syndrome. Definitely. And we have this problem, right, because Muslims have incorporated the disease of kufr, the customs. We try to come here and be part of a system, and we lose our deen in our culture. And so we start practicing culturalistic ways of life, and we try to mix it with Islam. And that's just like mixing acid and bleach. And so this is what happens. The Muslim psyche becomes distorted, his perception becomes distorted, and so therefore what happens is that he loses his sight of how Allah wants him to practice the deen. That's one of the things. Now in the month of Ramadan, the same Muslims who are selling the beer, they will continue to do it in Ramadan, and they will continue to do it, right, with the Quran being played in the store, like that can polish up what they're doing. And when you come in the store, they'll tell you, Ramadan Kareem, you know, right? But if you ask for some beer, he will sell it to you. And when it's time for Salat, this is the real shocking thing. You ready for this? He will take the malt liquor boxes and set it up as a sutra, and he will make his Salat. Iman deficiency syndrome. Now, with all these dynamics, right, all these things that we're talking about Iman deficiency syndrome, can you honestly say, right now in the state of the Muslims today, are they prepared for an Islamic state? Honestly. What comes first? The hospitals or the doctor? Which one's first? You see, when Allah created Adam, when did he become man? When Allah blew the ruh in him, that's when he became man. What makes my hands move? My soul. What is the key of preparing people for a physical state? They have to be prepared for an Islamic state of consciousness, spiritually purifying their minds and their hearts. Right now, we get a leader. We will have more chaos. We will be killing Muslims too. Why? Because this brother wants his leader. No, my sheikh is better. No, my sheikh is better. My imam is better. He could make it right. With all this confusion. Egos, pride, arrogance is all in the psyche of the Muslim today. Everyone wants to be recognized as Dr. such and such, Sheikh, Dr. Muhammad, Ali, and titles. What about brother? Just call me brother. Oh, no, I'm Dr. such and such. Titles, names. You know, this is the nature of human beings They want to be on top. And the reason is because Allah says it. He says it in the Quran how man is hasty. You know, Khuliqal insana min ajal. Man is haste. And according to Anas radiallahu anhu in an authentic hadith, he said when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam, Shaitan began to roam around Adam, and he seen a hollow spot, and he said, this creature has a hole in him. He's weak. He's hasty. And when Allah blew the ruh into the body of Adam, and it reached his head, he sneezed. And they said, Alhamdulillah, Yahamakallah. And when it reached his eyes, he seen the fruits of paradise. Right? And his stomach desired it. And before it could reach his feet, he grabbed for the fruits of paradise. And the verse was revealed that man is in hastiness. So today we have that nature, and Shaitan plays with it, that we're quick to want to see things happen before going through the preparations. I always say, proper preparation prevents poor performance. And if we are properly prepared, and especially Muslims, we should. Why? Because we are always looking at the time for something. For Salat, for Ramadan, for Jummah, for the Eid al-Adha, Eid al-Fitr. So we should always really be prepared. But as soon as Ramadan comes, it seems like we have 3 moons, because everybody is fasting at different times and doing the holidays. We have, all this confusion. There's only one moon. Oh, we're going according to this. No, we're going according to this. No, they started now. I just want you to understand that in Saudi Arabia, right, it's what? They're 24-hour difference. Of course, they will sight the moon before people in America, and they have to start it because they sighted it. In every location where you sight the moon, you should start the fast. Remember, it's an hour, 24-hour difference. So Jummah will come first in Saudi Arabia. Ramadan will come first in Saudi Arabia, you see? And so we're still fighting over what is clear in the Quran and Sunnah, So these are only sicknesses of the heart, and it be fights over this. You were deviant because you didn't fast with us. You were deviant because your pants is not above your ankles. You ain't on the salaf. You got to get on the haq. Get on the haq, man. This is the truth. You ain't the true salaf. And anyone who claims to be is self-righteous. And that's the arrogance of Shaitan, because Shaitan said, Ana khayru minhum. I am better than him. And so you think your deen is better because you got your mishwak in your mouth. And that's deen to you. Or your turban is real tight to the sky. Or your beard looks real good. Oh, brother, your beard is too short. You got to let it grow longer. Iman deficiency syndrome. Oh, brother, and you have to pray like this. Allahu Akbar. Like rigid, where no flexibility. No, brother, you have to. Of course, we line up straight in our ranks and things of that nature. But sometimes that'll make a person run away. No, brother, you have to do it like this. Now, it is sooner to wear your pants above the ankle. What I'm trying to say is that a basis of you following the Salaf, or is it your deeds? Because the Salaf Salih, they considered themselves insufficient because of their deficiencies of sin, that they would cry in their salat with tears. They used to have black marks from crying in salat because they was fearing that Allah wouldn't, and hoping that Allah would forgive them for their deficiencies. But yet you're saying, I am of the Salaf. It's like you're giving a definite article about it. You say, I am the Salaf. That's a definite article. They call it Adatu Tarif. I am the, like Ar-Rajulu, I am the man. Rajulun, a man. But you're saying Ar-Rajulu, which is I am the man. So you have to be careful of attributing self-righteousness to yourself, because none of the Sahabas did that. They were fearful and concerned about their own sins. You know, so here we are trying to establish things, right? We want to see Muslims be organized. We do. We want a leader for our community, but the methodology. Oh, look at our families. Some of our children don't even want to make salat anymore. They're not even interested in the Sahabas. They're interested in these, these rap stars, and they're interested in these songs and the basketball players and the musical stars who are more attractive. And we need to start doing how the method of the Prophet did. He went to his family and tried to reorganize his family to spiritually understand what Islam is. That was his methodology. You know, he wasn't quick to try to talk about, soon as revelation came down, to try to get this state. They had to prepare their minds, their hearts and their souls spiritually to deal with the confrontation of the Meccans. And that takes spiritual training to deal with tyrants like Mecca. And look at today. The kids, you think they will go into battle in the condition that they're in today? Because when you talk about confronting kufr today, it's physically now in areas where the Muslims are suffering. Here in the West, we have to spiritually train them to be prepared for the greater struggle, which is physical. And right now, the world has captured their hearts. The attraction has captured their hearts. So right now, we have to look at the steps towards dealing with these sicknesses. They have what we call ilm al-batin, and that is to acquire the virtues of the soul, which is tahdhib al-akhlaq. That is the purification of morals. We have to get our children morally correct. You have to get yourself morally correct. And what we call tahdhir al-qalb, which means making the heart sensitive. That means we have to prepare our hearts to be sensitive to the sins that we commit. People commit sin without having no feeling and remorse about it. If a man can sell beer and pork as a Muslim, he's not sensitive to his sins, not knowing that Allah in any minute could destroy him in that state. You see, and even calling your Muslim brother a kafir or a deviant, the Prophet ﷺ said that the one you call a kafir or a deviant, if it doesn't apply, it goes up into the heavens and it goes to the person who called him a kafir or a deviant. And we say these things lightly out of the tongue of our mouths, right? Not knowing the seriousness, how that word could carry you to the lowest depths of the fire. And we say these things easy. You're a kafir, a Muslim. You see? Being sensitive to our sins, the heart, making the heart sensitive. And the way you do that is that sometimes you should strive to cry in prayer. You should, because crying is an indication of fear and awe of your Lord. Sometimes we go through the mechanics quickly. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen, ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah. That's not salat. That's not, you have to have al-kushur. The focus of the mind and soul is a psychological and spiritual inclination towards who you worshiping. And this is why he said, what is ihsan? Ihsan is to pray as you see Allah. Although you do not see him, he sees you. You have to stand there like you are standing before the Lord of the worlds. Now you see in some of the masjids, especially in America, they go, Allahu Akbar. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Maliki yawmiddin, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in, Ihdina sirata mustaqim. That's not salat. And this is real. And I told the brothers before that one time we were talking and the brother was making salat, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and I thought he was an agent because he was like listening to what we were saying, so we had to move away from him. So this type of attitude shows that we not even dealing with the basic principles of salat. Some of the children don't even know, they don't make wudu correctly. These basic principles that have been that we go over in classes still are not comprehended yet, because we're too high over here dealing with this issue when we didn't deal with the basics. And Islam is a basic way of life, and it's fundamental and broad. It is also to train or educate something capable of being reformed. One effect of the amal is the banishment of undesirable things which hinder man in his progress. Amal is in fact the subjugation and the direction of the appetites, along with the path and the controlling of your passions in order to bring the lower nature of man under subjection of the reason. Mujahada, which is the struggle of the self, which is the nafs, to keep your nafs in control, to not be overridden by nafsi amma, which that nature of the human is inclined to do evil things and wrong things. He has to control that, you see. And in order to have mastery over himself, he has to first do that. When we do try to champion on our cause, we be yelling, screaming, and offending the Muslims, abusing them with their tongues. And you may be right, but there's a methodology of how you deliver your message. And so controlling the lower self is an indication that something, or when you find that the person has to reform, that means he has to go back to that which is natural. Just like the Prophet said, he said, Kulu maulidin yuladu ala fitra. Every child was born on fitra. Some people translated Muslim, but it didn't say that in the Arabic. Every child is born on fitra. If you mean aslama fi samawati wa ma fil ard, that's totally different. Everything creation of heaven submits. But every child is born on fitra, meaning the natural inclination to know that there's no God but one, and it's either his mother and father who makes him a Christian or Jew, based on the parents. If both Muslims, then the child may be Muslim. But if society gets a hold of him, then it's what you call a fitri, which is a fungus that gets on a tree, meaning the tree is sick and diseased. So what happens is that the child gets diseased by entering a kuffar society that's not conducive to his nature, so he gets the virus, and he starts living according to the customs, yet as a Muslim, but yet something is not right with his actions. And he has to purify his actions so that they can be right in the sight of Allah, not judging off of what a man or a brother think you are. I would never allow anyone to be the criterion of my Iman. As the brothers who say, you're not on the Salaf, you're not established. No, you're not the criterion of that. The Quran is the criterion. So, inshallah, when we look at that, the negative is the determining condition of the positive. If you're going to take something out of your heart, naturally you must put something in. So that's the recycling. And what happens is fasad, is corruptions or something that's spoiled. Our hearts go spoiled when we are entering these fields of faksha al-munkar. So what happens is that it's just like leaving meat out on the counter all night. It decomposes. You see the maggots come out of it. The heart gets spoiled when it doesn't remember Allah. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَتَطْمَئِنُّ قُلُوبُهُم بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ أَلَّا بِذِكْرِهِ وَتَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ. Verily the hearts, they find satisfaction in the remembrance of Allah. So that is one of the cures. And so something has to be removed from the heart, and something else is to be put in place, called su al-khalq, the evil character, right? Al-sifat al-ridala, which is the bad and undesirable qualities that we have. We have to purify those things. And then Kubth al-batin, the evil from within, and amal al-mushaqqa, which is the action that brings misery. And all these things bring misery, and that is the cause of Iman deficiency syndrome. All these haram things that we commit brings misery to the heart, because the heart no longer is nourished by the remembrance of Allah and the practice of the Sunnah. So when we look at these things, we see that the Muslims have much to do and much work. And in order for the heart to accumulate belief, they say that the heart has the statement of recognition first, the acknowledge and the affirmation. Action of the heart, which is al-ihtizam, al-inqiyad, and al-taslim, which is commitment, voluntary submission, and acceptance. This is the requirements of having Iman. That if you say something and your actions is not in confirmation of that, then this is considered to have what we call nifaq. Nifaq is another disease. And nifaq comes from nafaqa, which means holes, tunnels. Like a mole rat goes through different holes and tunnels, and it shows its face on one side and it shows another. And the munafiq is the actual person who contradicts what he says, and his actions is not in conforming or relating to what his heart has confirmed. And so what happens is that the brother, the Muslim or the sister, she gets the disease of nifaq, hypocrisy. And so in the masjid, he's Muhammad. But outside the masjid, he becomes Mo or some other person. And so what they call in sociology, the approach conflict, where that he wants Islam and the dunya, and he mixes them. And so he becomes psychopathic and disordered, because Muslims are psychopathic, that they have split personalities and many multi-personalities, schizophrenia. You think these things, Allah speaks about it, but they use psychological terminologies. The munafiq is a schizophrenic. He's a psychopath, the one who splits his life up, who indulges in things in the society that he faces and then comes to the masjid and he's somebody else. And in order for us to have the requirements of the sweetness of faith, as Allah says, He says, فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُوكَ فِيمَّا شَجَّرَ بَيْنَهُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَجِّدُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا مِمَّا قَضَيْتَ وَيُسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. Wallahi, none of you can have the sweetness of faith until you make Muhammad your judge in everything you do, and that he finds no resistance in what he has ordered you to do. None of you could really believe, and unless you love the messenger more than you love yourself. So that also entails, when we get to the matter of brothers practicing Islam halfway, or sisters practicing Islam halfway, that is a disease of the heart. You can call it lack of Iman, because Iman increases and decreases. According to Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, he said Iman increases and decreases. It increases just like a thermometer. The temperature goes down when it's cold, and when it's hot, it rises. So when the servant worships Allah and do good deeds, his Iman increases. If he wakes up for tahajjud and does this as a practice, his Iman increases. If he make the nafils, and if he's spending more in the cause of Allah with ikhlas, not with the riba money from the stores, and then you come to the masjid and tell us that's sadaqah? No, that is not accepted. So here it is, it increases doing ibadah, worship, and it decreases when you do the things that are evil or prohibited. So what happens now is that the Muslims have to realize that the points of increasing the faith is that we do it through actions and good deeds. And in order for the Muslims to be purified, they have to be able to have what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about, firasata, which is when our hearts are pure, we get firasata. Ittaqu firasata mu'min, fa innahu yanziru bin nurullahi. Fear, or be conscious of the eye of the believer, because he sees by the light of his Lord. So firasata means insight or intuitive perception, or the perception or discernment of the internal or intrinsic state, the condition and the character or circumstances by the eye. It is like the examination where the patient, the intern, and the doctor. The doctor can see what's wrong with the patient because he has more experience. And so he's able to detect what's wrong. The intern, which is the Muslim, who may be not a mu'min, because there's different stages. The mu'min will always be a Muslim, but the Muslim is not always a mu'min. And that is because of the level and degrees of the Iman. And just like there is istislam, la iman. There is a form of submission to Islam, but faith have not entered your heart yet. As Allah warned the desert Arabs, the Bedouin Arabs, do not say that you believe, but just say you have submitted your will. You have submitted your will, but faith has not entered your heart yet. So there's a stages that will be developed within the Muslim. So the one who has firasata is able to see beyond the signs because his heart, ikhlas, is pure. And he has begun to continue to polish his heart, as the Prophet said, verily these hearts gets rusty just like a pipe gets rusty when water falls on it. And the Sahaba says, Kila wa ma jila'uha. He said, what is the polish of it? Kathratu dhikru mauti wa tilawatu Qur'an. The recitation or remembrance of death and the recitation of the Quran is the polish of the heart. So these are the stages of getting rid of the Iman deficiency syndrome. Remember, the Iman is our immune system, just like the state of the Islamic Empire was the immune system to protect the integrity of the world. But first and foremost, before they even did that, they had to go through taskil nafs, purification of their souls and their hearts. And so what happens, Allah also mentions, أَفَلَا يَتَّدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. Do they not deeply ponder and reflect over the words and the meanings of the Quran, or their hearts locked up by it? So what happens, tadabbur means to contemplate, to ponder, to reflect, to meditate, to consider the meanings of the Quran and endeavor to obtain a clear knowledge of what is in it, to study it repeatedly in order to know it. And to know it is to practice it, not just to quote it. And so, as Allah mentions, fi qulubihim marad, in their hearts there's a disease, a sickness, marad. The word marad means disease or disorder. A distemper, sickness, illness, a certain state foreign to the constitution is injurious to the intellect, whereby a man quits a state of soundness or rectitude in his deen. This is what the marad of the heart is. And so that goes back to where the Prophet said, verily in these, he says, there's a morsel of flesh that's in the body. If it's righteous or sound, the whole body's sound. And if it's corrupt and evil, then the whole body's evil. Ala wahil qalb. It is the heart. So you can get a spiritual disease and it relates to a physical disease. Yeah. If you have a sick heart, a sick soul, it brings on physical illnesses. And that is the manifestation and sign that the soul is what needs to be worked on. Because the soul has the attributes of Allah. When he blew the ruh into Adam, it is attributed, it is stamped, fitra, fatara, to creation of natural disposition where man is inclined to know his Lord. And the polish, when we mention about death, we should think about death because that puts you in your true state. Because that is the destroyer of pleasures. The Prophet ﷺ said, do much remembrance of the destroyer of pleasures. And the destroyer of pleasures is death. So, like I mentioned before, when I take the British Airlines, that is, I do more dua than anything. Because at that moment, you're in the sky, no one can save you. Those safety tips about putting on the balloon and all that stuff, that ain't what I depend on. And I don't believe that that will save me. The only thing that's going to save me is what I did last. And the last thing that when the plane is going down, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, La ilaha illallah, and that's it. But the people are jolly on the plane, you know, and the last deed that they do, say mate, give me a bottle of wine. Give me a bottle of wine. That's the last thing they do. And they don't think at that moment that could be their death. And that's the last thing they do. You will be raised up on the last deed that you commit. And so that is the time it puts you in your true state, thinking of death. And also the Quran, you know, because imagine when the plane is going down, the atheists, which I believe there is no such thing as an atheist, no matter what they say. Because when they get in trouble, they say, oh, God, help me. Why? Because the nature is stamped in them to know that Allah exists. It's there, it's written. You know, and at that time, Da'ullah mukhlisin lahuddin. They call on Allah with sincerity at that time. And everyone does that. It's the nature of the human being, to call on him sincerely at the time of death. Oh God. And if an atheist didn't believe in God, then how did he know how to deny something that didn't exist before anyway? In order for you to I don't believe in God, then how did you know he exists? To deny something doesn't mean he doesn't exist. It's just that's one of the forms of kufr, to reject what exists. Your rejection don't stop the world. Your rejection don't stop Allah existing. It's just you have a personal doubt that he doesn't exist. But for a person to say, I don't believe in God, then you could never deny something that never exists anyway. So this is part of the kufr nation. Muslims could fall into kufr when kufr ni'mah, which is the ingrate Muslim who feels that when nothing goes his way, he goes, oh man, inconspicuous shirk. It's like a black ant on a black night on a black rock. You cannot see it. And it's inconspicuous. We do it every day. And so we ask Allah to forgive us for those things that we feel that didn't go our way. See, the Muslim praise Allah, rather it's good or bad, because it all comes from Allah. And whatever Allah wants for us to have, we have. And whatever he don't want us to have, we don't have. And that's the attitude of the Muslim. On a global perspective, Muslims have to start putting our priorities straight. Don't you know there was a Sahaba that we don't even know his name, right? But he did something. He never made salat, he never fasted, he never gave zakat, but he went to paradise. You say, what hadith is that? But he came at the right time. And that's what Sheikh Ihtisam was talking about, the value of time in Islam, the right time. So what happened is that he came, a man came, a rajulu mukannamun bil hadid, a man with an iron mask came, said, Ya Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullahi, uqatilu aw uslimu, uqatilu aw uslimu. Should I fight or should I become Muslim? And the Prophet said, Aslim thumma qatil. Become Muslim and then fight. And so he took Shahada, became Muslim, and he fought, and then he was killed while he fought and died as a martyr. And the Prophet said he did little work but got big reward. So he came at the right time. But yet he understood his priorities. And the Prophet instructed him what his first priorities was. If he was to fight before coming Muslim, it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have carried nothing. So what I'm saying, Muslims, put our priorities first. Do we strive for the state first, or do we purify the ummah, purify the hearts, purify the souls, purify our children, the domestic problems in our homes, in our communities, the divisions, which is a disease of Iman Deficiency Syndrome, different sects. And you know what? Why do you call yourself these names when Allah tells you clearly in Surah Al-An'am not to break up into sects? I don't understand. Do you understand that? Tafarruqu? Not to divide yourselves? So why should I advertise this sect and this sect? And let me tell you this. Allah says, hold on to the rope altogether. If the name divides you from the rest of the community, get rid of the name and drop it and just say, be Muslims. Be a Muslim. Why? That's not enough for you? I'm this Muslim, I'm that Muslim. Adjectives on adjectives. Muslim describes an adjective. That's an adjective. It's something you're doing already. And this system is good for false advertisement. And I think we have accumulated that. Islamic this, Islamic that. That's an indication you lost your identity. Because there was no such thing as a fundraiser in the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why? It was incorporated in the deen to spend your money. There was no such thing as Islamic this and Islamic that. Why? Sacrifice was something incorporated in the deen. And they didn't have to call on those things. Why? Because you lost your identity in the world of kufr. So we have to say Islamic this, Islamic that, Islamic this, instead of just doing. Abu Bakr just spent his money because he knew that what you should do. And he knew and he understood that paradise was what he was trading the dunya in for. So our investment should be in good deeds instead of investing in Chase Manhattan Bank in the United States or the BCC, whatever bank, HSBC, and we're investing trying to get a pile of gold and make our morning more without doing work, interest. So we have to reflect on these things and understand that this is not an attack on anyone. It's just something from my understanding from the scholars and of those who are best to understand this way of life. And it is the inscriptions and the knowledge that comes from them. And I don't claim to have all the answers, nor do I claim to be a scholar or anything of that nature. But this is basically coming from the principles of Tawheed, which is the basis of what the Prophet ﷺ taught for 13 years. And I think we need to go back to the basics. And another, just mention about the sisters, about the covering. The hijab is part of your deen. It's part of your Iman. If a woman doesn't cover up, if your wife is not covering up, and I'm talking about in America, there's a lot of women who have the misunderstanding of the hijab. They believe that I can be Muslim in my mind, and Allah knows what's in my heart. And they come to the masjid, like I call it the Batman and Robin Superman syndrome. They go in the masjid, put on the covering, make salah. After salat, take off the covering, go back to work, split church and state. And it's just like Clark Kent. He's Superman one time, and then he's Clark Kent. And that's a disease. That's a split personality within the psyche of the Muslim, which is a symptom of Iman deficiency syndrome. You see, because you have to wear the hijab all the time, except for the prerequisites of your family members. When you're in society, you must wear it. When you're in the masjid, you must wear it. When you're all doing your duties, you must wear it. And it's not an option. It's not like, mashallah, she's, that's just the little faith she has, inshallah, she'll get it. No. It's a basic fundamental order that Allah commanded the Prophet ﷺ to tell the believing women and his daughters to cover up. It's an order, no options. And we have to understand it like that, because the Prophet ﷺ said that the women will be in the hellfire, a lot of women. And they asked why. He said most of them disobedience of their husband and the hijab. And they seen some of the women being held by hooks by their hair. And he said, why? Because these were the women who didn't cover up. Now that's a serious, serious thing. To tell you, he's telling you the future. That what happens when you disobey Allah. That when you walk around here, I don't want you to be smiling. You got Muslims in America, right? Women having sex with kafirs as Muslims, and they give baby showers. Praising. And Maryam was a chaste woman who no man has touched her. The women can't say that today. They got kafir babies, and they praise it through baby showers, honoring that. And everybody's, alhamdulillah, congratulations. No, you must ostracize that. Don't let them feel comfortable in the community committing faksha al-munkar. You must look at them, because look at the orders, look at the punishment that it will cause on the ummah if we allow the faksha al-munkar to spread. When we offer dua for Allah, He won't hear us, because we didn't do the principle of من رأى منكم منكرا فليغيره بيده فإن لم يستطع فبلسانه. Whoever sees this atrocity, let him change it with his hand. If he's not able to do that, let him speak out against it. فإن لم يستطع فبقلبه وذلك أضعف الإيمان, which is the weakest of faith, to have it in your heart. So we cannot praise a faksha. We cannot praise it. And we cannot look down as it's good for our community. And maybe that's why globally the Muslims are in the condition we're in. We left the Quran and Sunnah. There's only two sides. الَّذِينَ آمِنُوا يُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Those who believe fight in the cause of Allah. وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا يُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ الطَّاغُوتِ. And those who disbelieve fight in the cause of the Taghut. فَقَاتِلُوا أَوْلِيَاءَ الشَّيْطَانِ إِنَّ كَيْدَ الشَّيْطَانِ كَانَ ضَعِيفًا. So fight ye all the dupes of shaitan, because his plan is daif, is weak. So brothers and sisters, I pray that Allah bless us and increase our faith and purify our hearts. And may Allah guide us and protect us from all the corruption that is happening in our communities. May Allah protect our brothers and sisters in Iraq, in Bosnia and Chechnya, in Afghanistan, in Kashmir, in India, and everywhere where the Muslims are suffering. وقولي قولي هذا واستغفر الله والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Okay, the question from the brother is what do you think of the September 11th attack, and was it due to Iman deficiency syndrome?
First and foremost, the September 11th attack, despite of the magicians of the media who have presented this attack as being the result of Muslims, but I refute that it was orchestrated by Muslims based on, not a dogmatic position, but based on a factual videotape that has just been released. And on the tape, it was a documentary based on FBI Chief Ted Gunderson, Jordan Maxwell, who is a historian in secret societies, and Anthony J. Hilda, and many more. This videotape I've brought to the UK as evidence to redirect your minds towards facts. And inshallah, when the copies are finished, I believe the FOSIS organization will have them on display. But to mention a few things about the September 11th attack is that this was a textbook plan orchestrated by the Bush administration, the CIA, and the Mossad. And to really go into the dynamics of it, you have to first understand the political apparatus of the infrastructure of the United States and the Allied forces of what they're trying to bring about in this world. On the tape, there was a State of a Union address that was given by ex-President George Bush, the father, and this speech was called a New World Order speech. And President Bush, ex-President Bush, said that on the tape that now is time for a New World Order. And this New World Order is one great big idea where all governments are under one government. And that means that they want one government, one leadership, one economy, and one banking system in the hands of the United States. And this document and this speech was given on September 11th, 1991. So the date is not an insignificant or coincidental date of why this took place. On that day when it happened, 2,000 or 3,000 Jewish people didn't attend to work that day. Those are facts. On the tape, the FBI chief, Ted Gunderson, gives documents saying that the CIA had orchestrated the attack on the World Trade Center and the secret government, and he gives documents of it. And when it blew up the first time, he said it was the CIA who paid an informant who worked with the Egyptian intelligence, and they orchestrated to blow up the World Trade Center. Why? Everybody's asking. Why would they do that to their own people? Why not? If you have an agenda and you want, because it only benefits the politicians, it doesn't benefit the Muslims, okay? Now, they made Osama bin Laden public enemy number one, America's most wanted. Why? Why wasn't he the enemy before September 11th? Because nobody knew who Osama bin Laden was before September 11th. No one knew who were the Taliban before September 11th. And no one knew what was happening in Afghanistan before September 11th. And no one knew that in the Reagan administration, the director of the CIA, William Casey, financed Osama bin Laden and the Taliban with $3 billion of weapons to fight who? The Russians. Now, why would they do that? Just like they financed Iran and Iraq with weapons to kill one another, which is facts, to kill Muslims, and Muslims kill each other. The biological weapons were made and sold by the United States. So now when we look at the September 11th attack from the media perspective, you won't have the true facts, because you had to really know the history behind that event. First of all, The Pentagon is a no-flying zone. If it was orchestrated by a plan other than the government, the planes would have been shot down and never reached the World Trade Center. Those are no-flying zones. And the ex-Mossad agent who worked with the KGB, who retired, announced on the radio station in New York City called WBAI, he said there is no way that no Muslims from a cave or any people could orchestrate and break national security of that magnitude. And then hijack planes from different locations, very sophisticated job, with the box cutters. And they sold this to the people. They hyped and made the people believe in such way. And I don't really want to talk about it because when you get the tape, the evidence is on the tape. And if you said, oh, you're saying it because you're a Muslim, if there's any non-Muslims, the tape is not made by Muslims. It's made by ex-government officials, CIA, Secret Service men who work with the government, who's exposing what is happening. Now, when you say, is that a Iman deficiency syndrome, so you're already, I assume, blaming Osama bin Laden for doing it, or are you blaming the Muslims? Because if that is the case, I would like to direct you to the Quran. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in ja'akum fasiqun bin naba'in fattabayyanu. O you who believe, if a wicked person, a fasiq, comes to you with any news, make sure you ascertain the facts. Where's your evidence? Antusibu qauman jibahalatin, or you will cause harm to people out of your ignorance. So never judge your brother based on BBC or CNN in New York City.
Next question is, how do you think we can overcome the disunity among Muslims all over the world?
Well, that's a big job, and I say that it's not impossible, but I know that it is a big job because of the disunity, deep disunity within the Muslims collectively. But what we need to do is call to the original source of what we've been calling to, and that was the oneness of Allah. And remember that the Hajj is one of the essence of unity. Here you have Chinese, Japanese, black, white, Asian, whatever you want. All of them coming to the place of worship, worshiping one God, and seeing that as a potential offset of unity to see that everyone in the world comes to do the Hajj. Why don't we have a difference on that? You see, that shows that we should establish the unity and begin to start in our own communities first. I know that's a difficult task because we have people who believe their way of Islam should be pushed forward. But let's call them back to the oneness of Allah. Let's call them back to the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let's call them back to the Sahabas, who are the ones who established and exemplified the way of life. So if they disagree on that, then we'll never bring about unity. But I'm going to tell you something about this disunity. The Prophet ﷺ said the Christians would break up into 71, the Jews 72, and the Muslims 73. And the ones who are saved from the fire will be the ones who follow Quran and Sunnah. Now, we can see the manifestation of that hadith being prophesied, that the Muslims are divided. And that you have to stay away from all the divisions and all the sects and establish the one way that the Prophet mentioned about the Quran and Sunnah. I mean, we have to start in our own communities towards these things. I mean, certainly I don't have the answers or have the like a magic wand to make us come together. But these are things that we must strive in our own communities, first starting home.
Question is some brothers and sisters may leave here today without really changing, and can you give some practical points as to how to regain our Iman?
Well, what I just gave in the speech, I mean, it was very laid out and clear, but the whole thing is that the brothers need to start evaluating their own sincerity. Are you true to the cause? Do you make salat only to be seen of men, or when no one's watching you, Do you still continue to keep that so-called self-righteousness? The real thing about increasing your Iman is first building a relationship with your Lord personally. Ilm al-Mukashafa, which is an intuitive knowledge that one receives from his Lord, and Ilm al-Mu'amala, which he transits in his social interaction. He has to build a personal relationship with Allah, be sincere with himself about his worship. He has to increase his Iman. Now you're right, some people may not change. And it's just like a vegetation that doesn't grow. That here it is, rain falls on it, and no vegetation grows from it because it's a dead land, it's desolated. So some of our hearts and minds are just like that desolated island or that vegetation where it doesn't grow. That is because some of our hearts are still sealed, and that is an indication we need to purify our hearts, to have an open mind and an open heart of what is being said and what we have to do as a priority in Islam. But again, Allah says, never will he change the condition of a people until they change within their own selves. And that only indicates that Allah already blessed us with the ni'mah. We turn the ni'mah into wrath by disobeying Allah, and so therefore the change is actually from us, from a good state to a bad state. And so if we want to regain the favor of Allah, then we need to implement what he has enjoined on us.
Next question is, what would be your advice to Muslims and to other brothers who have just started practicing Deen and are bombarded by all these people saying, oh,
yeah.
Shia.
You see how we falsely advertise and confuse people who just come into the Deen? You can mislead people by your actions and your so-called personal school of thoughts. And you could be responsible on the Day of Judgment for that. We need to just teach the people who became Muslim the basic fundamentals of Tawheed. You know why? That was the method of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No one can ever refute that. That's how he did it. And how many years he did it for? 13 years. We basically give them the understanding of who Allah is. And giving them the understanding with the prayer. How many prayers they have to make? 5 times a day, every day. You see, I'm not calling to no ideology. Inshallah, I'm following the Quran and Sunnah. You will never hear any other title. I will always tell you that, inshallah, I'm a Muslim. There's nothing on the back. I ain't selling nothing. I don't got this special secret knowledge, where we begin to call people, come here, come on over here. The knowledge is here, brother. The haqq is here. He said, don't let nobody else know. It's only for you, brother. It's only for you, sister. They're not ready for it. You see all these in the corner sheikhs, that's the corner sheikhs, the one who hide in the corner and they have this high spiritual knowledge. These things we need to help keep that away from people who just became Muslims and give them the basic understanding of Tawheed.
This question here is, can you tell us how Brother Tyson is doing?
Tyson's in trouble. He has Iman Deficiency Syndrome, and he's the greatest example of Iman Deficiency Syndrome. Definitely. Tyson is just, and it's because people around him are not giving him the right understanding of the Deen. They're not giving him the proper education. He has a tattoo on his face now. He's just mentally, he has a problem. And we pray for him though, but I'm being truthful. His condition is disgraceful in the media and to the Muslims who at first seen him, making prayer, but now that's a case of Iman Deficiency Syndrome.
And leading on nicely is, what should a person do if they recognize someone with
IDS?
IDS, yeah.
Wow. Treat him. Give him the cure, the prognosis, the Quran. You mention it. First you have to, it's it's a way of giving nasiha. And sincere nasiha. You have to tell the brother, even probably invite him for dinner and say, brother, based on what Allah and His Messenger say, I care for you. You my brother, and a brother's a brother to another brother and sister, and his honor, his property, and his wealth is sacred. So he goes to him with the best intentions and allow him to see what's wrong, but showing him, look, this is what Allah says. You can teach him that way. you know, so that he won't think it's personal. But if you go, brother, man, you off the hook, man. You ain't following the sunnah. You know, yo, you bid'ah, man. You ain't right, you better get on this hot. How you gonna cure a man like that? You know, you have to really slowly give him nasiha. Because nasiha means to give the person advice that will benefit him, where that what you're giving him helps him to change from what he's doing. And so it's a method. Even Pharaoh, the Prophet Musa alayhi salam, he warned him to go to him and speak words of kindness in order that he may receive it. Today we've lost that. We're brutal, you know, about how we give the dawah. So when you recognize it, you do at least. And Allah says that the reminder will only be accepted by those who fear Allah, and it will be rejected by the ones who are wretched. So, you know, we do have to approach them. If we care about them, we try to give them the information in a nice, soothing, and kind manner, inshallah.
Okay, Mom, that's it. Once again, Jazakallah to the Imam who's come on very short notice.